Mr. El Prosser was, as they say, only human. In other words, he was a carbon-based bipedal life form descended from an ape. More specifically, he was 40, fat and shabby, and worked for the local council. Curiously enough, though he didn't know it, he was also a direct male line descendant of Genghis Khan, though intervening generations and racial mixing had so juggled his genes that he had no discernible Mongoloid characteristics, and the only vestiges left in Mr. El Prosser of his mighty ancestry were a pronounced stoutness about the tum and a predilection for little fur hats. Let's talk about Hitchhiker's Guide then. Arthur Dent has a spectacularly bad day. First, his house is demolished, then planet Earth is demolished. Arthur survives, but only because his friend Ford Prefect manages to hitch a ride for them both on board a Vogon constructor ship. The Vogons are a thoroughly unpleasant bunch, and Arthur soon learns that they were responsible for blowing up planet Earth. The Vogons soon capture Arthur and Ford Prefect and throw them out into deep space, but not before torturing them both with their poetry. Arthur and Ford Prefect survive. They're taken on board a ship called the Heart of Gold, but things don't get much better for Arthur. He soon realises he knows two of the occupants. There's Trillian, a young lady who he unsuccessfully tried to woo at a recent party, and then there's Zaphod Beeblebrox, the man who successfully chatted up Trillian at the same party. There is also a depressed robot called Marvin. They travel to a planet called Magrathea, and Arthur is forced to question his own sanity when he learns that the Earth was commissioned by philosophical mice from a different dimension. He also learns that the Earth was built as part of a grand philosophical experiment, and he also learns that the mice have secretly been in charge the whole time. In fact, Arthur is very nearly lobotomised by two mice, but he narrowly escapes, and as the five of them leave the planet on board the Heart of Gold, Arthur is given a momentary respite when he learns that Zaphod Beeblebrox is taking them for dinner at the restaurant at the end of the universe. I must admit, I had my doubts about this one. First of all, science fiction isn't my bag, and this does fall broadly into the category of science fiction. Nothing against it, but it's just not for me. Secondly, there's a fact that I first read this about 20 years ago and also watched the television adaptation, and I remember both of them being very, very silly. I did fear that I may no longer be as easily amused as I was, but I needn't have worried. I enjoyed it a lot. I found that the humour was light-hearted and whimsical, the characters are colourful, and the prose is mostly rhythmic. In fact, I read it twice, both times in one sitting, and I've listed the 5 things that I liked best about Hitchhiker's Guide. Here we go. Number 1, I like it when Arthur and Ford Prefect, they go on board the Heart of Gold, and Arthur becomes most annoyed when he realises that he's met Trillian before. He tried to chat her up at a party, only for his attempts to be thwarted when Zaphod Beeblebrox had slid over and uttered the immortal words, "Hey doll, is this guy boring you?" True story now. A few years ago, I was at a pub and 2 young farmers came in. They both had their lady friends with them, and I was horrified to overhear a snippet of conversation in which the 2 men, the 2 young farmers, were talking about the differences between clay and mud. Now, Zaphod Beeblebrox sprang immediately to mind there. I can't say that I scooted on over and said, "Hey ladies, are these guys boring you?" but I did think about it, so it still counts. Then, number 2, as a lifelong technophobe, I did smile at myself in chapter 11 when we find out what the guide has to say about robots. We are told that the marketing division of the Serious Cybernetics Corporation defines a robot as your plastic pal who's fun to be with, which is a good start, but curiously enough, an edition of the Encyclopaedia Galactica that had the good fortune to fall through a time warp from 1,000 years in the future defined the marketing division of Serious Cybernetics as a bunch of mindless jerks who were the first against the wall when the revolution came. A bit harsh, but come on, who hasn't wished death upon people who manufacture and market faulty technical goods? Okay, maybe it's just me, but I enjoyed it all the same. Thirdly, I enjoyed seeing Ford Prefect persuade the chief of the demolition crew to lie down in front of his own bulldozer to cover for Arthur when he takes Arthur to the pub, and in doing so forcing the demolition foreman to question his own sanity. Lovely stuff. Number 4, it's nice that my birth county of Essex gets a mention, however briefly, and we are told that, according to the guide, Greenbridge, Essex is the home of the worst poet in the galaxy. Her name, we are told, is Paul and Nancy Millstone Jennings, and she has a distinction of being able to write poetry worse than that of the Vogons. Number 5, I love Marvin. I must admit that a borderline suicidal robot is going to be an asset in any novel, but The thing about Marvin is, the reason why I like Marvin so much is that I actually knew someone just like him when I was at university. I mustn't name this person because there's a small chance he's watching, but when I say he was similar to Marvin, I don't just mean that he was boring, monotone and humourless. I mean, he was all of those three things. He certainly was. But there's more to it, mate. You see, this chap, this real-life Marvin, felt like he was undervalued. He felt like he was underappreciated. I mean, we all know the famous line from Marvin about having a brain the size of a small planet, yet he's expected to walk people to the bridge. Well, this chap came to him once, most aggrieved, and explained that he was a trained concert pianist who was forced to supplement his income, providing piano accompaniment to would-be musical theatre singers in a gay London wine bar. So yeah, I've known a real-life Marvin. I just hope he's okay and that he's discovered his own answer to life, the universe and everything. If I've got one criticism, it is this. Some of the passages, some of the phrases or sentences are a little bit laboured. They take a long way to get where they're going, and it requires hard work, but I don't feel like my effort is rewarded. I don't feel any richer for seeing them through. But luckily, there are only a few passages like this. For the most part, there are passages, paragraphs and entire chapters that you will enjoy enormously. I'm confident of that. Okay, I'm going to finish by reading to you, and this is a short but sweet passage. Here we go. Far back in the mists of ancient time, mighty starships plied their way between exotic suns, seeking adventure and reward amongst the furthest reaches of galactic space. In those days, spirits were brave, the stakes were high. Men were real men, women were real women, and small furry creatures from Alpha Centauri were real small furry creatures from Alpha Centauri. Lovely stuff. Okay, guys, leave your comments below, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.